speakers, you can challenge some of the speakers, or if you just want to have a chat with them, you can do that as well. So lots of opportunity to network and also socialize virtually or even live as well. As you can see, what we've done now, we've prepared the stage for our first panel of the day, a healthy, productive discussion all about the IT architecture, the IT landscape this year, and how you're going to take your companies, or if you're working for an IT company, or if you're connected it with IT in any way, how that's going to transform and move forward next year, this year and next year. I'm sure some of you have your own ideas on what's really happening and what's going to happen. On the stage now, 4 people together with the moderator are going to have a healthy discussion, and hopefully at the end of that you can walk away with some insights yourself that will be relevant exactly to what you do. I think the stage is ready. Yes, it is. It's ready for us right now. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage our 4 panelists to join us right now. So first of all, from RBA, Mr. Ivan Knezovic. From FreshBooks, back on the stage, Darko Zelic. Rea Marton Kodak, Reversing Labs. We've got Krešimir Kuha, who was with us yesterday. And the man who's going to take this kind of forward and make sense of everything that's happening here on the stage. Please welcome to the stage, from Netokracija, moderator Ivan Brezak Brkan.
Well, thank you for having us. I'm Brezak Brkan, the founder and the founding editor of Netokracija, which is a magazine that follows the technology sector, startups, and everything that's happening in digital in Croatia and the Balkans. And I'll be speaking to my wonderful panelists here about IT architecture, scaling, and a lot of topics that relate, such as finding talent and so on. But before we go into the details, I'd like for my panelists to just introduce themselves and say a little about their experience with our IT architecture, starting with Krešimir.
Hello. So some of you seen me yesterday. I'm working at a company called Reversing Labs, and we are basically analyzing millions of files per day and extracting data for our customers. I'm working on the position of DevOps engineer, and this includes mostly deployment pipeline, building differend systems, and so on. Also monitoring, logging, and typical part of the backend infrastructure that is used everywhere.
Cool, thank you. Martin?
Hey, my name is Martin. I'm a top contributor on Stack Overflow. That's one of my things I'm doing every day. Besides that, I'm in scalability, running a project with a lot of services. I am also in the database world as well, running terabytes and petabytes of data. I'm doing mentoring, and I meet a lot of people as well, all sorts of, from students to consulting as well. And I hear a lot of discussion this year that everything has shifted.
All right, well, I think you remember me. I was just on the stage. So I'm going to keep it very short. Darko, engineering manager for FreshBooks, helping FreshBooks establish engineering in Europe. And, well, my touch points with architecture are maybe these days not so much hands on keyboard, but being aware of what's happening in the system, what problems we have, how to prevent future problems, and enabling the teams to address those.
Hi, I'm Ivan. I'm head of IT in Raiffeisen Bank. We are now kind of moving banking forward. For the last 3 years, we are really kind of shaping the new banking reality. So I'm happy to talk about it.
Cool. So we have different aspects of IT architecture here. First, maybe a very obvious question. There's something going around, some kind of COVID thing or something like that, and it's kind of impacted the whole world, including obviously IT, digital, and so on. Has it impacted the way you think about IT architecture in any way? Either from a technological point of view, from an organizational point of view, has it changed something?
In our case, the most challenge is the challenge that the COVID has put us to is how to organize work. So basically, how to organize teams and so on. In the architectural part, the IT itself, it didn't impact the plans that we had. Basically, we are moving towards explaining data to the users. Basically, we have tons and tons of the data, and we want to, we've implemented some machine learning algorithms that are explaining this data to the users. So basically we are moving towards that. Maybe in the scope of the COVID-19, we can look at that you can't talk face to face, and the algorithm will do that for you. So it will extract the data and it will explain it to you as person would. I think that is maybe the impact that we had. Also, another thing was that we are moving more to the cloud-based stuff, and we are using more cloud providers than before. Basically, you have AWS, GCP, and so on.
I work in Romania, and basically the company which we do is an outsource business, so we work for the other projects as well. And our divisions, we have 14 divisions inside the company, 170 employees in 14 divisions. We have seen that, as previously the speaker named, discussions has changed in this year. We started to monitor that thing, and I just want to say a little thing that people, when they were in the same room in the True building last year, they had a conversation about their problems. Being at home or at the beach where they probably have been, and they didn't have the conversation. And we introduced for them that they should use Stack Overflow. And we had to monitor them. How we are monitoring? Each company member was recommended, it was not an obligation, was recommended to create a user on Stack Overflow. And we have seen like how many questions or how many answers they said. Stack Overflow has an API, and we could actually name this thing. On some minor things which were closer to a new stack, like React, they were much more into this field. The communication and the social media list team, they were non-existent on Stack Overflow. We accepted that. It was a true challenge, and I would want to see this next year if this stays, if it was just a one-time experience of 2020, or it stays in the organization as the company.
Why did you decide to recommend using Stack Overflow instead of trying to build some kind of internal community or something in order to have these conversations?
It's disrupting work. So being on Slack or on Skype or having 30 emails just for a one-line reply, it was just too much. And we had to take an action for that. And we recommended Stack Overflow. I had a history with Stack Overflow, so there was an idea for that. And some people actually become, eventually later we touched this topic, platform engineer. Like on the field that they work, a platform engineer and platform general, platform specific team. So this was mostly the thing. I'm not saying that this is something that we have the results for that. We are still evaluating this process, but it's a growth. They learned a bit how to express their ideas, how to put a question, because on Stack Overflow, if you don't put a good question, you get negative downvotes, and you need to rephrase the question.
So in an attempt to also help them communicate more and better, basically through that.
True.
Yeah, just to expand, like for us, there was not that much architectural change in our software because our software was already in the cloud, distributed, and all of that. Maybe, okay, we see that, thanks to COVID, there is maybe a spike in more small businesses, which are, previously they had to do something else, or they were part of a bigger corporate or something like that, and now there is more smaller businesses trying to survive, so that is interesting. But the architectural change was in our internal architecture, so how do teams communicate, what is our infrastructure, how do you get to production, and stuff like that. Because, and it's actually interesting because where we started, we were just in one building in Toronto, and then in January we opened an office in Amsterdam. So we had this like, oh, there are two offices and everything works from one office but not from the other. And then a month and a half later we had 350 offices. And then of course you had to change a lot to enable people to just do their day-to-day. And then communication-wise, we're actually encouraging people to talk more, so to Zoom or Slack call or whatever, because we've seen a lot of inefficiency in trying to formulate a perfect question and then trying to formulate a perfect answer, which would eat a lot of time. So yes, it's asynchronous, it's nice, but sometimes like a lot of conversation just would happen normally in a hallway, or hey, can you just help me with this? And we try to facilitate for that, so that people are comfortable disrupting others if disruption is going to be 5 minutes instead of asynchronous 30 minutes of everybody spread across the day.
Yeah, I fully agree with colleagues. I don't think COVID really influenced anything big in IT architecture. I think the only thing that we can see is that all the transformations that everybody are going to just this was a catalyst towards it. In terms of IT architecture, I mean, the major concepts that everybody are working on in the last couple of years are actually just coming to life. Like, I don't know, data mesh, we talked about it. So these kind of concepts are just, let's say, getting right, finally, yeah? We all know, even the technology, like we are all talking about, big data for years, but I just now see, real implementations, not only cloud-based, but also on-prem, that are really being used for the first time, but actually used, yeah.
So everything that might have been talked about even at conferences like Shift, finally now is being implemented. Okay, so most of you mentioned some sort of cloud architecture, AVS, etc., etc. Krishmin, in the talk before, you mentioned how you were trying to be also cloud agnostic with your solution, but this is a question for all of you as well, is how do you think about when you're choosing your cloud provider? Is it about being cloud agnostic? Is it about, what are some of the criteria you might use? And
this is basically because our customers are using different solutions. So we provide products for their environment, and if they are using AVS, we provide them images for the AVS. If they are using Google Cloud Platform, we provide for that. And now there is a challenge to create agnostic solutions, so you don't have to develop for every service that you don't, for every platform, you don't need to create different deployment scripts and so on. And we are using different tools for that, for example, Terraform and so on. And basically what we want to do, we want to have the same service, the same process for every platform. It's not for us to decide, okay, we will use AVS, we will use GCP, because the clients are using those platforms already. And maybe what has changed that during the COVID and how the data and work was shifted more in the cyber part of the world. The different companies approach us. They are smaller companies that we used to work with, and they have their requirements and so on. And that impacts the work that we do, because we need to do some special features for them if we want them to keep using our services or use them at all. And that is one of the impacts that we've had. And also, I would like to add to the communication. What I've noticed with the people, that maybe there is some creativity that is left out, because when you are working on some feature and you are face to face with people, I don't know, you go to the beer afterwards and so on, and in those situations, you come up with the solutions and maybe some creative ways to solve the problems. But when you are working from home all the time and you're in the four walls and you're communicating through the Slack or I don't know Skype or Stack Overflow, you don't have that kind of thought process as when you're speaking face to face.
Okay, so I will touch this question. I will touch this question in a different way. I would say that for ongoing projects, 2020 was a big break. Like they could barely give for some task tickets. Like there was no work or up to this trending deck of work. For new projects, we have seen a big change of requirements. And I will just touch two keywords, Kubernetes and machine learning. So every small project, not banks, not e-commerce, not small projects approached us that they want machine learning Kubernetes. Okay, so we had to find a way to explain them that Kubernetes is not something for a small project, or let's call them small because they are only starters. But they were mentioning that they are looking for investors. They are looking for series A, B, C, and series. They want to sell the project. It needs to be 2020 technology. Then we came to the decision that what they need is containers. And if the application is containerized from the very first beginning, later it can be scaled even to Kubernetes and to other platforms. The next thing was that they don't have budget. Okay, but if you want Kubernetes and no budget, that's a problem. We need to solve it. And there we recommended managed services, either on AWS or on Google Cloud Platform. And the business people had to understand that each cloud vendor offers a free credit or a referral, because there are big famous conferences where they could have a deal of starters for, I don't know, 12,000 cloud credits. And that's for a small business is like 1-2 years of credits. And then they're choosing the platform, either the other or the other. And managed service, which means that they don't need sysadmins, and it's managed by the cloud vendor. As they have grown, only some projects is grown where they have true marketing, because without marketing, you are not self-growing. Where they had good marketing, they have grown this year, and mostly those were the e-commerce thing, like from little no shops, like delivery and so on. This kind of businesses was who contracted us in 2020, and they had growth for that.
All right, yeah, so for us it's maybe a bit different because we're not business to business, so we're business to consumer. So, essentially we care where we put our stuff, and, nobody else is going to tell us their needs or something like that. So it was just, checking the price in the end. So what does each of the cloud providers offer? How much does it cost? How much is it aligned with our needs? At a time and with our projected needs, let's say a couple of years from the moment we switch. And, what pieces they have off the shelf that we can use to leverage pieces of our technology. Of course, all the cloud providers nowadays, they're all comparable, so the differences there are pretty small. And in the end, our senior vice president of engineering is ex-Googler, so guess in which cloud we are.
Aves. Yeah, I'm coming from financial industry, which is usually not a cloud-native company, but even we are really, I would say, piloting, but more on hybrid cloud options. Also, looking at the feature set of all the providers, there are quite interesting. We don't have a Google vice president, but we have a quite interesting journeys there. But cloud-based, we are cloud technology stack is there. We have it in the company. This is more of a, how to say, a strategy to expand in the future when we need it fast. Yeah? So for now, it's more of a, I would say, kind of looking closely what's happening there, piloting, doing some R&D there, But production-wise, I don't think financial industry will still, for a couple of years, be ready to really migrate production stack to some cloud provider.
I find it interesting, especially with some of the aspects of cloud being a buzzword for startups to pitch. I don't know if you've covered or read about what's happening with Oracle acquiring TikTok, but one of the jokes on Twitter is now that all the TikTok influencers are going to be pushing Oracle Cloud, which is far behind everyone else. But as far as talent goes, maybe not TikTok talent, but talent that you need, developers, engineers, etc., etc. Are they already, like, how hard is it to find talent that can work on the systems that you have, that is like ready to be deployed as AVS or something else is? Or do you need to, for example, have courses for them for the different platforms? Is it plug and play, or is it still a lot to do with onboarding new engineers? Whoever wants to start.
Yeah, I can jump on that one. So even though, my personal expectations are that in Amsterdam, in Canada, that every cool company is in the cloud, so everybody must be working in the cloud, a lot of people are not. And a lot of people, even when they are, they don't really understand what does that mean. So like, oh yeah, it's deployed somewhere, but I'm still writing my Python code, my Java code, whatever. There is no understanding of many instances and, no guarantees and stuff like that, and failovers. So yeah, in FreshBooks, but also in my previous company, we invested a lot in, training engineers to have first the basic understanding of what does it mean when something is in the cloud, and then building on top, and then eventually, getting some certification if they care about that. But for us, it's more important that they understand that there is more than, like the technologies that were there 10, 15, 20 years ago, and to try to think how to use them. So yes, of course, I'm biased towards people who have this experience in the interviewing process, but if they don't, we know that we will be able to accommodate for it, and we have a plan how to do that.
What would you, from your experience, suggest to others who find a challenge, maybe to help them get that knowledge?
So, I think all the cloud providers have free courses, so start with those. Yes, the most basic ones sound a little bit like a sales pitch, and sometimes you're like, okay, come on, please kill me, it's 8 hours of a sales pitch. But you will have heard something that you have not heard before. You will get a couple hours of hands-on in Google, in Amazon, doesn't really matter. And then you can go on to the next levels. The next levels, depending, so sometimes they're free, sometimes you have to go like on Coursera or Udemy or whatever. Sometimes you can wing it on a conference and stuff like that. But find the areas that you're passionate about and then see what is the equivalent in the cloud and follow that. Because I've seen some people who are like, oh, cloud, yeah, it has one of everything. So I'm going to learn a little bit of everything, and then they don't really get any understanding of what they're looking into, and especially if they don't understand what is the non-cloud counterpart of it. So find, the technologies that you're using day to day, if they're not cloud native, see what's in the cloud, see how you would shift this to the cloud, because also a lot of companies will do just like, oh, this is our architecture, let's just shift it. And now it's a lot expensive, and it's not, how it should be. So see what is the first step to shift it, and then the second step, how to make it cloud native, and how to make it, easily scalable and stuff like that. But I know that this now sounds like, oh, there is a big world and it's unraveling. But just start with a fundamentals course and then see what attracts you.
I believe the talent in 2020 is the same in Croatia. It's always challenging. We run, I would say, a kind of bleeding edge architecture, which is quite nice. People are interested there, but there's really not a lot of people who can really be kind of senior devs on this technology, as you're saying, in cloud. There are many people working, but nobody really understands it too much. So what we are now trying kind of set up is, bring in top senior people, and also at the same time, really talented juniors, and really bring them up. After a while, we thought, this is the only way we can build really a good concept and really a good base of people who can really work on the technology that we are using right now.
How would you define a very talented junior in this sense? Are they dabbling with AVS for some kind of project of theirs, or?
I mean, talented. What I see more, the one trait that I'm looking for all the people that I employ is, willing to learn. If they took some, free course of AVS or whatever and talk about it on the interview, this is really a good plus for me. Yeah? But actually, after a month or two on onboarding process, you usually see, who are the people who are really into this whole game for being in love in IT, working for things you really love.
I would answer that first we want to keep our engineers and then hire new ones. So 2020 opened the world with home officing to a lot of freelancing. So we have lost a lot of people because why staying at home working for a local company when you could work for an abroad company with not in kunas, in euros or different sort of currencies. So people had more time in 2020 and we offered them to certificate. So if they could learn and pass a certificate, it becomes a more value for the company. And they could stay longer with our company. And I recommend that also for junior developers as well. And I would here touch again the topic that I say platform team. So in our company, we have shifted that in a certain department, it become a platform team. Like they are the AVS DevOps team, or they are the GCP DevOps team. One is poor on React technology. One is also backend engineer, and these kind of things. And for juniors, we have a strong relationship with universities, and we touch with them not the curriculum, because that comes from the capital and from the government, which is like 20 years behind in Romania. Sorry, maybe not here, but yeah, it's too much theory. And with the universities, we had opened the practical line, and they come to internships, or they do at home remotely remotely assisted internships. And eventually what we see from them is that they use a lot more charts, like diagrams. So in 2020, I have seen from the students that in order to have their ideas plotted, they have been recommended and they started to use more charts. And this is something I always wanted from a junior or a student, but I couldn't make it to happen. But it came this pandemic, and naturally it happened. So at least I know that they are not, let's say, a better software developer, but at least they can do charting.
I would like to say that this is from now on for the future, for the developers. They should be open to learning, and it will become requirement that you do not only know developing, but you also will have to know about operations and where your applications will be running and so on. Knowing the requirements and, I don't know, some cloud platform and processes that are going behind the development itself. And I think that is the most important thing for junior developers and new developers, and maybe also some senior developers, that they are willing to learn those things, and they are willing to acknowledge that it's not only, okay, I will type the code, I will put to some guy, he will deploy it, and that's it for me. So I think that is the important thing from now on, as we are moving to this cloud sphere.
You all come from very mature organizations, from banks to very large now scale-ups. What would you advise also maybe smaller companies, startups, maybe those that are pitching Kubernetes and everything else just to be sexy and buzzworthy, how to think about their own architecture? Should they, well, in a lack of a better word, bother overthinking it? Or should they set everything up right from the very beginning? Do they have time to spare until they're big and ready to scale up? What do you think?
I would choose that they should run serverless from the beginning and think in services. In a project, we always face the problem that every task is a medium or a high complexity task. What to give to junior developers? And serverless have arrived. And with serverless, it's like implementing a call or implementing a task, and that can be taken by the junior developer as well. And this is something that opens their mind, like being not the monolith, not containers, like being service-based company. And the second one is that they should, from the beginning, imagine that they are not a shop or a business that has a website. They should see themselves as a data company. Data comes a new information, a new era. So we can run big data analysis on a small data set, large data set. But for that, we need a lot of data. And machine learning, which a lot of people nowadays want, that means that they need to have a certain year of information in order to build a model or predict, forecast, recommend based on machine learning. And they need to acknowledge this concept, and they need to build to acquire the data.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just to expand on that, like, of course you're not going to do it perfect the first time, right? So, but you also have the benefit of not having this legacy monster that you built 10, 15, 20 years ago that now you have to take apart and make into small services or whatever. So, as I said before, like, if you know nothing about the cloud, it can be a bit overwhelming. But in the long run, it can also be cheaper, because so a lot of people, as we were discussing before, they're just going to be like, okay, yeah, it's cheaper for me to rent one server and it's all going to be fine. And then later I'm going to need 2 servers and then 3 and then 700 and then, horde of people who are making sure that they actually work. So yeah, start small, experiment, create like a terrible proof of concept, put it as a Lambda or, cloud function or whatever. And once it actually attracts a lot of people, you're going to be in a position where it's easier to do something about it, rather than having to rethink and revamp yourself completely if you are running on a server in your mother's basement or something.
So practice is far better than theory in this case.
Yeah, and so this is, sometimes hard because there are a lot of people who are perfectionists and like, no, I'm not going to release it to anybody until it is the best thing ever. If you wait long enough, you're not going to have any customers, and all the funding that you manage to get, you're going to lose it, and you're going to spend it in making this perfect prototype that is probably going to be irrelevant by that point, because there's going to be like 3 other prototypes which are buggy, which are ugly, but they're out there and people are using them because people have the need. And I mean, I assume that people have the need because this is why you started your startup anyway, right? So yeah, just run with it, and I would say be as honest as possible with your first customers. So of course, don't tell them that it's completely fake and that the demo that you used to get the funding was, very scripted and that you clicked all the correct things. But also don't tell them that you have the best platform out there and that you're better than your competitor who has 20 years of experience. Maybe you are, and sure, be a little bit cocky, but also manage their expectations that some things are gonna go badly and that they are one of your first investors and that you're going to be maybe a bit more flexible towards their needs, so to accommodate for their trust in you as well. Because I think this is very important that we have, even in the business side, that we have a very human relationship.
Ivan, Krish, anything to add?
Yeah, fully agree. I mean, you will not get the architecture right from the day one, but you have at least now not 20 years of legacy on behind you need to tackle, So you have I would say, you can experiment, and this is, I think, the greatest thing, especially cloud brought this, that you can really now try whatever enterprise technology you want without really a lot of people to run it there. So this is really good times for all the startups, I would say.
Yeah, this may sound stupid, but if you're starting from the beginning, design your application that it is scalable. So basically, start with the design and make it scalable. So if you will need to expand your system, it will be easy. So start by reading how to build scalable infrastructures. What are the requirements and so on. I mean, it's self-explanatory, but I think it's a good advice. So.
And not a lot of people do it, obviously. We're coming to the end of the panel. Any closing thoughts, maybe? Tips, tricks? words of wisdom, as they would say.
You mentioned Lambda and the functions. I may add that this year, cloud vendors have put on the market a new serverless type of business, and that's running container as serverless thing. So it's not a single function, it's a full container, and you can run an entire application as a function, and you can containerize everything. One of such platform is Cloud Run. And there you just 4 lines, and the container is out in the internet. 2 million requests is free every month, so even has a nice free tier. And this is constantly coming to other cloud vendors as one. And this is a shift, because serverless was 5 years have meant only function, one single function. Nowadays, serverless means that a single container that can auto-scale on Black Friday day, and also the gate to Kubernetes eventually if you grow to the big platform, because this system natively can migrate into Kubernetes.
It may be worth mentioning that pretty much every cloud provider has their sales team, which is working to help you reduce your cost. And even though this sounds, like counterintuitive, don't they want more of your money? They want you to actually stay with a provider and to use their best technologies and not to waste their resources as well. So you can sometimes get very useful advice from them in the latest technologies, and how you could switch parts of your architecture for something that's going to be better performing, and that will be able to survive Black Fridays and such.
Awesome. If that's all, I'd like to thank you for being part of the panel. I hope it was useful, and we're done. Thank you.
Thank you.